This keyboard can be used for self-defense.
Mechanical keyboard.
You need a keyboard.
20 keyboard.
Crap, keyboard.
The keyboard.
The keyboard.
Keyboards. Yes. Today, we're talking about keyboards. Now, apparently, these things have taken over the world. I used to think the keyboard community was just a bunch of weebs who like to tinker with stuff, a bit like the Gundam community, or the community who puts together model planes. But apparently, I think everyone has that aesthetic desk setup pic hidden away somewhere in their photo gallery. When did keyboards become cool? A lot of these boards are custom and reach ridiculous prices that people are apparently willing to pay for a keyboard. Now, that's what I used to think. And I really thought keyboards were stupid. Nothing but mundane tools that help us, do our work for the day. Until I bought my very first mechanical keyboard, saw a video on YouTube of some keyboard audio, and all started going downhill from there. Hi, it's Brick. Today, I'm gonna tell you the story of how I got stuck in the keyboard rabbit hole, and unlike many of my unfortunate friends, how I got out of it. Unless... You guys, I have to set everything up here. Welcome to the story corner, I guess I'm gonna call it. Okay, so this keyboard story all starts off with this guy. Yes, the Gigaware K28. I think I got this in early 2020 when the pandemic just hit, and I got my first PC together. Before that, I was using this guy, but we're not even gonna talk about that because no one wants to hear that. So I got the Gigaware K28 for like $16 or something crazy like that. And I actually really loved how the keyboard felt. I didn't really know much about the keyboard or anything about keyboards in general, but I noticed that people at home would comment about how they could hear me typing. Even if they weren't in the same room with me, they could still hear me typing. I didn't really think much of it until one of my friends asked me about some advice for mechanical keyboards because he knew I had one. And he said, "Hey, could you take a video of your mechanical keyboards? I want to know what it looks like, what it sounds like." Let's see how that went. Yep, that's what it sounded like. And yes, I actually enjoyed typing on that keyboard. I'm not sure what it was, but because the keyboard I had before this was some mushy membrane piece of trash, I actually absolutely loved that keyboard. I loved my Gigaware K28. So, slowly but surely, I got my first upgrade. I found a keyboard on the used market with brown switches and these cute multicolor keycaps, and it was only for like $35, so I went ahead and got it. Thus begun my descent into keyboard madness. So at this point, I had bought so many keyboards and keycaps and accessories like keycap pullers, lube, brushes, films. I don't know, I couldn't even count at that point. I was starting to think, do I have a problem? I had even brought my keyboard to hang out with my cousins and got them to try out all of my different keyboard combinations, different switches, different keycaps, different sounding mods and everything. I was deeply entrenched in this keyboard rabbit hole, and with more and more of my friends being interested in this stuff as well, it became the subject of practically every one of our conversations. I was really trying to pump the brakes on my purchases because I had already spent so much at this point, but then news of this beauty came. So news of the Keychron Q1 came out, and I thought it was the absolutely most incredible looking board. A full aluminum build, squared off edges, chunky bezels, comes with a coiled cable, well reviewed, and with a soft gasket mount. Oof! This thing was incredible. Now, I know that the Q1 isn't that expensive at the price point of around $200, and yes, apparently that's not that expensive which is kind of crazy. But spending $200 on a keyboard was crazy to me at this point in my life. As a brown person, I think my parents would actually die if I told them I was willing to spend $200 on a keyboard when most people won't even spend more than, I don't know, $30, $20 on a keyboard, right? So it was really just so hard for me to wrap my hand around spending that much money on this keyboard. But I was thinking, could this be my endgame? Term, endgame. Meaning, the final stage of a game such as chess or bridge when few pieces or cards remain. Okay, that doesn't sound right. Let's check something else out. So, short answer, ideal keyboard. Okay, well, you know what? I guess that explains it, but I think endgame is a term that consumers use to define the pinnacle of their hobby or craft or collection, whatever. People refer to their endgame keyboard as the keyboard that will stop them from upgrading, because it simply isn't possible. If you keep falling deeper and deeper into the keyboard rabbit hole, the term endgame is almost this refuge from the endless cycle of consumerism. The safe haven from constant purchases that one in the keyboard community only dreams of. Now, the question is it real? Or is it only a pipe dream? And that's what I wanted to know. If I actually went out and shelled out $200 to get the Q1, would my keyboard woes finally be over? Just the thought of me spending $200 on something that most people don't even spend that much money for cannot be sane. But also, maybe the feeling of losing $200 to a f***ing keyboard will make me never think of getting another keyboard ever again.
3 hours later.
So, I was thinking back and forth about it, completely conflicted, to the point where my last 2 brain cells were duking it out in my head 24/7 about making the stupid, silly decision. And apparently it was all I was talking about with Uzi, so with my birthday coming up, she actually offered to pay for half of the keyboard so I could get it. Isn't that sweet of her? Total sweetheart. Anyway, at this point, I was thinking maybe I should spoil myself for my birthday. I do deserve it. It is my birthday. So I did it. I made the decision. I went out and ordered one, and apparently it wasn't available in my country, so I had to figure out where to order it from and how the customs would deal with an expensive keyboard or whatever. But my mind was made up. I'm finally getting my Q1. Thank you so much, Uzi, by the way. So finally, the Q1 comes in. I had to wait an entire month after spending so much money on this thing, and I was waiting for so long it felt like an eternity. But it finally comes in, and somehow I still have the restraint to keep it in the box until my birthday, because I had this idea of opening it up on my birthday night and setting it up, and everything makes it for a really nice birthday experience. I don't know. It's hard to recreate the childhood wonder of a birthday, but there you go. I really tried my best. So I remember the day of my birthday, I finally had the chance to open this thing up and saw just how gorgeous this thing was up close. It was this rich black, and it looked just how I wanted it. When I got it out of the box, it was so much heavier than I had anticipated, and I was just completely in awe of this thing. Of course, I ordered the full kit because I thought I could always use some extra switches and some new keycaps, a bit of a keyboard enthusiast hoarder mentality, but I had to spec this thing out completely exactly the way I wanted it. I had these Max Key SA keycaps that I spent way too much money on because they sounded incredible, some glorious Panda tactile switches, some band-aids, PE foam, tape, lube, and tweezers, and I was ready to get this thing modded exactly the way I wanted it. So I got to modding, and I even got my sister to use her smaller fingers to shove the little band-aid piece into the stabilizers. We spent all afternoon modding everything we could on this board. I was almost bursting from excitement with the thought of having my very own Q1, exactly the way I wanted it, and reaching the keyboard nirvana with my endgame board. So at this point, everything was put together, and I couldn't test it just yet because I had to cook dinner on my birthday. So I waited after later that evening, plugged in my keyboard, and finally got to testing. I finally set everything up, put the keyboard on my desk, got monkey type on the browser, and was ready to hit the races. I loved how this keyboard felt. The sound was so marbly and deep. It somehow didn't sound like my other keyboards. Maybe because of its weight, maybe because of its material, but it sure didn't have that cheap plasticky sound. I did a couple runs on monkey type, as you do when you start getting into keyboards, and I was noticing that I was missing a couple letters here and there. But I didn't really let it faze me. I just kept on going because I loved typing on this thing so much. The problem persisted though, and I had the tiniest lump in my throat from the thought of something being very wrong with my keyboard. So I went to a keyboard testing website and found that a few keys weren't working. Well, no problem, right? Probably just some bent pins. So I went to switch out the switches with some new ones, and still nothing. I was smashing the P key like a madman, just trying to make it work, kind of in denial that my severely extravagant purchase has come in defective. So after some time and key mashing and some tweezer pin testing, I concluded that the hot swap socket for the P key was somehow defective or broken. I noticed that some keys weren't as responsive as others as well, and I think it was the right control key or something around that right modifier key cluster, but the denial was starting to wane, and something much more serious was starting to kick in. I was mad. Of course I was mad. I was furious. How could I spend close to $400 on this keyboard for it to come in and just not work? I had to put this thing back in the box, and believe me, that was the single angriest reboxing experience I've ever had. So I plugged in my old keyboard, started typing out some admittedly overly angry emails out to Keychron for sending me a defective product that I waited close to a month for, by the way. But it's really hard to keep being mad while sitting on your desk and writing something out and trying to write something that was readily comprehensible. But I tried my best to keep that anger because I had just too much pride to let it go. As time passes, we start understanding that most strong emotion is quite fleeting. I start trying to forget about it so I can move on and continue working, and that made it easier to communicate with Keychron support. They told me to try sliding a piece of paper underneath the socket to see if that might be the issue, but I couldn't seem to do it. It seemed clear to me that the hot swap socket was the cause of the problem, so I took initiative to order some extra hot swap sockets online so I could switch them out myself. I thought maybe I could do the soldering on my own and everything would be fine. I just have to wait, which was the really hard part. Since I had to order these hot swap sockets in, I had to wait about a week and a half for them to come in. And mind you, this whole time, I wasn't able to use the keyboard. So I was just using my old RK68 this entire time. It's been about 2 weeks since I got the keyboard, and I haven't been able to use it at all. And this really takes a toll on you. I knew that the stabilizers weren't modded the best they could, and they still had a bit of rattle, but I couldn't get myself to fix every other minor thing about the keyboard when I knew it was defective and had to be fixed first. So all I had to do was wait. The day finally came, and I was ready to get to work. I got my soldering iron that I borrowed from my cousin, and switched out the D41 socket for the P key, as well as the socket for the right control key for good measure. I felt this relief that I haven't felt in a long time for this keyboard, mixed with something that I didn't feel in a while, which was excitement. Excitement to finally use my Q1. I put the keyboard back together with a PE foam, tape mod, and everything, including switches and keycaps, and I was so ready to get this thing plugged in finally. So I got on my desk, plugged it in, and went on good old monkey type. despair. How could it be possible that the P key still doesn't work? The possible reasons for this were so beyond me that I was actually sitting there in disbelief. There's no other reason I could think of that could cause the P key to just not work, other than maybe a PCB problem, but I didn't see any damage on the connections or anything, so I was completely confounded. I tried mashing on it again and again, and it seems to register a key press when I push the key really harshly, almost with so much rage, but on normal use, it just wouldn't work. So there it was. Acceptance. Yes, acceptance. I had to accept that this keyboard is just completely defective, and I have to wait for a month or so for a replacement if I can even convince Keychron about a replacement when it's been 2 weeks since I got the keyboard in the first place. I just accepted the fact that I might never actually get to use this thing, and that my bank account is in shambles. For absolutely no reason. And that shit hurt. It hurt like a bitch. At this point, weeks removed from the happy, excited Brick that just got his Q1 in from the mail, I was almost numb from all the emotions. About a keyboard, by the way. And I just wanted to put this thing back in the box, pull out the good switches, and put my keycaps, good keycaps, on the RK68 so I could use this thing as a daily driver and just keep the cursed Q1 as far away from me as possible. So I switched over the keycaps and the switches to the RK68 and put the old JWIC yellow switches on the Keychron. And the strangest thing happened. A miracle. When I put the JWICs on the Q1, it was still plugged in. And I kind of wanted to know what it felt like with different switches on. I don't know, just to feel more pain, I guess. But while testing, the P key miraculously started working. I went on monkey type, tried it out again, and it was working. I took out the switch, added in a different JWIC switch, and it continued to work. Then took out the JWIC switch and put a Panda back in, and it didn't work. Somehow, the expensive almighty Q1 doesn't work with glorious Pandas. Now, I'm not sure if this is something that only I'm experiencing, and I never went to any forums to ask, but I looked at the pins on the JWICs and compared them to the Pandas, and it seems like the pins on the JWICs were just a bit longer than the Pandas. This explains why pushing hard on the Pandas registered as a keystroke. So there it was. After everything that happened, it all worked out fine. I kinda just sat there in awe. I didn't want to do any typing tests or sound tests or anything with my keyboard. None of that. I think after everything, the frustration of receiving a faulty board, the discomfort of waiting for parts to arrive, the despair of parts not working the way I had intended, after all of that, I think the moment I spent just staring at this keyboard was me finally coming to terms with the exhaustion I felt from this whole keyboard debacle. If it hadn't worked out the way it did, I think I would spend some time distracting myself from all the money I had wasted. But because it did work out in the end, I'd finally had a moment to let it all sink in and give myself room to feel exhausted. After staring at this keyboard for what felt like an eternity, I put it together, got on with my day with a new keyboard, and that was it. No feelings of joy or elation for my endgame keyboard finally working and part of my setup. Nothing like that. I wasn't sad at all either, but it almost felt like my emotional batteries were so drained that I couldn't possibly feel anything anymore. Now, I know this is starting to sound overly dramatic of me, but as a person who really waited for weeks on end to unbox a Q1, of course I'd be puzzled at the level of my enthusiasm at this point, or lack thereof. But I got on with it, and am still using the Q1 today, exactly how it was set up then. No upgrades, no changes, and not an inch deeper into the rabbit hole. So, this is my Q1 now. I am still using the fairly affordable JWick yellows, Max Key SA keycaps, tape mod, and I added some band-aid strips between the top and the bottom of the case so I could stop the board from resonating when typing. Great tip for metal cases, by the way. And as you heard during the sound test, yes, my keyboard still has a bit of rattle, and the stabilizers don't sound all too uniform. But you know what? I'm completely okay with that. During the process of planning and scripting this video, I was thinking of buying some Durock stabilizers and maybe some alpacas and making my keyboard sound perfect. But to tell you the truth, I just couldn't be bothered to do it. I thought that I would show you that I have my endgame board, and the perfection of this endgame setup has dissuaded me from buying any other boards or upgrades or parts. But you know what? I want to be completely transparent. It's not the board, or the keycaps, or the switches. My entire experience with getting the Q1 and not being able to use it for close to a month because of how the P key didn't work, and waiting for parts that don't even solve the problem, really put things into perspective for me. I took a chance on this purchase because I thought the Q1 would be worth all of my money, but what I got for my hard-earned cash was so overwhelmingly negative that the Asian in me squirms at the thought of all the rice I could have bought with the money I spent chasing this pipe dream of the endgame keyboard. Now, I'm very sorry if you came into this video thinking you'd find an answer to the question, will buying my endgame keyboard get me out of the rabbit hole? To this day, I can't give you an answer. Maybe it will. But you know what? Most likely, if you continue to enjoy the hobby so much and continue to talk about keyboards with all your friends, you probably aren't going anywhere. You're going to continue to watch YouTube videos about keyboards, like you are right now, and you're going to keep trying to reach the bottom of the rabbit hole while digging yourself deeper every single day. I have made friends, many friends, because of keyboards, and to be honest, this hobby has given me a lot of joy and excitement. And that's why people get deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole without even noticing it. Because the way there is filled with interesting conversations, a world of options, and new friends too, if you're lucky. I think the way out for me was the complete opposite of that. Keyboards made me feel anxious, frustrated, sad, and by the end of it, completely exhausted. A lot of that was because I had never spent this much money on a hobby, and I really thought this keyboard would cement me as an enthusiast and help me feel like I deserved to be in the scene. But during this time, I mostly just felt anxious about the money I shelled out for it. And for it to come in defective, it was really hard to start feeling good about keyboards again. So, there's the moral of the story. To get out of the hobby, you need to incur a great deal of emotional trauma. Yeah, it really works. But in all seriousness, if you want my advice, and you want to get out of this keyboard rabbit hole because it's leading to your financial ruin, just unfollow your favorite content creators. Hit them with the not interested and don't recommend channel, and I promise you, it's gonna help. I think we're mostly in the rabbit hole because of the unending stream of content made to spark our consumerism, so cut it out, and you'll be better off. And another tip, it really helps to be broke. Whew. So I just finished filming this video, and you know what? I had a lot of fun. It's been months in the making. I've hardly had anything done because I'm a lazy piece of shit, but I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and hopefully I'll be making more if you guys want more. So if you guys want to support a little content creator like myself, hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming by and watching this, and I hope you really enjoyed it. There's more to come, hopefully. And it actually just makes me really happy to put something out there, because I've never actually put anything out there and never thought I was good enough to put stuff out there. So thank you guys so much for your support. Like, subscribe, although whatever, and maybe follow me on Twitch, because I'm gonna get back into streaming. But thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. I can't say that enough. I'll see from you guys again soon. Bye.